Let's start with the big story of the day, which of course is what's happening with Ukraine, Russia, what's happening with the Nord Stream pipeline, and the very latest. So Russia announced today that the world is being reordered, that we are watching a new world order unfolding right before our eyes. And I can't disagree with that. I mean, guys, we are witnessing a huge moment in history, in world history. We are watching the collapse of Western governments in real time, by the way. We are watching sort of the desperation of the World Economic Forum and these globalists who are sort of clinging to these this plan that is crumbling right before our eyes. This all comes as Russia launched massive military strikes inside Ukraine at multiple targets, multiple army units destroyed. They even shot down Ukrainian aircraft, which I didn't even know that Ukraine had any aircraft left, by the way. And they destroyed a number of major American weapons. But this also comes at the same time because a few hours ago, President Biden just announced a massive new aid package to Ukraine. Did he not?
It was Congress that put this up just a few days ago, quietly, right? Because there are a lot of needs inside the U.S. borders that Congress is giving lip service to, such as Puerto Rico, which continues to be underwater without power. But Congress has continued to make Ukraine their priority. Last week, they put up this $12 billion weapons and aid package after President Zelensky over the weekend said that the United States is sending regularly $1.5 billion. And again, the package that we were told early in the summer would be it for a while, right? Well, we're at the end of the summer now. We're early fall.
Right.
And I guess it's time. You know, we're supposed to have forgotten that.
So now the total is over $80 billion that we've sent to Ukraine. $80 billion. And I don't know if you've seen like the crime wave sweeping across the United States. I'm from Philadelphia, and to watch the videos from Steve Keeley, one of my old reporters at Fox 29 in Philadelphia, Fox 29, yes, absolutely devastating to see the murders and what's been happening in the United States. So we can send $80 billion to Ukraine, but we have a crumbling country in the United States. Meanwhile, this afternoon, the EU...
$80 billion, that sounds too low, because it was in March that we passed a $1.5 trillion package. So
1.5 trillion.
That happened back in March. It was.
We didn't pass one. We never gave Ukraine $1.5 trillion.
It was in that package. So I must have my numbers wrong. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, and even if it is 80 billion, it's like that's not including the weapons. Like how many billions is that? So that might have been part of the package you're talking about. It probably included the money and a sum of weapons.
Okay, what I'm remembering, I'm just looking back through my notes, that it was part of the $1.5 trillion federal funding package that prevented the shutdown. It was not all for Ukraine. I apologize.
Yeah, no. I mean, so 80 billion is the total this afternoon, according to Zero Hedge. So that's, again, you add 12 billion into that. It was around 67 billion. Now you add this 12 billion, and it's upwards of 80 billion right now. I mean, what's a few billion among friends? But still, ridiculous amount of money. Just think about the amount of money that we're sending to this country.
Well, and can I ask really quick, does that include the monthly stipend that they're getting too? Of what is it, 1.2 billion a month or something like that?
1.5 is what, well, Zelensky admitted to it yesterday, 2 days ago, that it's 1.5 billion per month now that the U.S. is like on an auto deposit.
Right, but one of your reports over the summer pointed out all of that is in addition to the contractor deals that the United States puts up on the Pentagon website every single day, which is not included in this aid, right? Because the United States is hiring contractors for sort of bits and bobs, bric-a-brac. Right. If you go to the Department of Pentagon website, Department of Defense website, every day you can see the amount of money that we are doling out to Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, etc. And so that is not included in what you said, the 80 billion. Yeah, so 80 billion. Anyway, today we also saw massive new sanctions coming down from the EU. So the European Commission announced this afternoon, today we are proposing new package of biting sanctions against Russia. Here it is, their tweet. Biting. Biting who, by the way? Because we know that they haven't been working against Russia to stop what their goal was, which was for Russia to remove forces from Ukraine. So biting who? I'll tell you who, because I don't know if you saw it this morning. There's protests in Prague, on the streets of Prague. There's protests in Germany. There's protests all over Europe because that's who it's biting. Well, they have to come up with some other scary adjective because the first ones that they used was crippling.
Crippling.
And that hasn't done the job. So now they have to bite.
Okay. Well, they certainly bite. They certainly bite. The EU just announced new sanctions, the new package of sanctions against Russia in connection with the referendums. So these are tied to, what I love is these sanctions are tied to these people, the 4 regions of the Donbass, saying that they want to join Russia. These people voted for freedom, and the EU sanctions them. This is amazing.
Right.
This is amazing. So they are literally $7 billion, 7 billion euros in sanctions. They will ban the import of Russian products worth 7 billion euros. Okay. So really going to bite them. Go after these people who just voted to join Russia. Good sanctions. Smart on you, European Union, as you're in the middle of a collapse. Also this afternoon, we saw then the U.S. Embassy in Moscow issuing this alert, telling American citizens to get out right now, leave immediately, as we appear to be on the edge of World War III. So there are a few things going on that I just wanted to touch on at the top. Now I want to get into the power plant. I'm sorry, the pipeline.
Well, I'm just going to add to that. In addition, the United States is really trying to lean on the European Union to not only institute these sanctions, but funnel more aid into Ukraine. So it's as if they have blinders on. They don't see that the euro has plummeted. They don't see that these economies are hurting, that most states in the European Union are now having to institute stimulus package, which didn't bigger than they did during the pandemic.
All because this is a man-made crisis. Again, Ralph Schulhammer, who we're going to have on the show in just a few minutes, talking about this. Like he has been one of the voices on this, saying like this is all man-made. Like they created this mess. So Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset agenda just got perhaps its biggest boost ever, thanks to the economic terrorism that was carried out by the globalists yesterday. Allies of the United States government, are now saying that the United States is responsible for carrying out the largest eco-terrorism attack in history, destroying the Nord Stream pipelines in the Baltic Sea. Now, we've learned a lot more since we were on the air last night as this was unfolding. We hope that we provided value for you last night with the information we have, but we have a lot more today. When we broke the story last night on our show about exactly what happened, we now know, according to the Swedish government, some seismic activity on this. The Swedish seismologists detected one explosion that registered 1.9 on the Richter scale. Here are the actual printouts from this. And the other that registered 2.3 on the Richter scale. The seismologists also said they saw zero evidence of earthquakes. So these explosions had nothing to do with earthquakes. What's more, do you know many earthquakes that have an explosion associated with them? No. You've lived in California. You grew up in California, so there's not like explosions associated with there's rumbling.
That's not usually what. No. Yeah. Explosions come after the earthquakes.
Right. When things blow up as a result of a collapse. I find this very interesting about the pipelines, though. So take a look at this evidence. These explosions took place quite some distance apart from each other. So as you can see here on this map, according to German authorities, these were targeted and they were far apart from each other. Notice the distance here. That is not close. These do not occur naturally. These were human explosives with one purpose. Purpose was to cut off supplies to Europe and destroy the European economy. And they're succeeding. The EU today says there is zero chance. So the European Commission is saying there's zero chance that this was an accident. It was intentional sabotage. Make no mistake about it. Western media, of course, this is amazing to me. Western media, of course, immediately tried to blame it on Vladimir Putin. And they used a photo from 2015 in multiple news articles. Okay, so, well, in a couple of different ones.
I honestly thought that this looked like they were trying to make fun of it. Like, it looks like a Despicable Me.
It looks like an Onion type article,
like
or like a Bumble, what is it,
satire.
Babylon Bee?
So this image that we're going to show you is something that I got out of because I subscribed to a newsletter from the Telegraph, and I was like, that's got to be a joke. They're not really saying that. And this is a totally serious newsletter that how
look at that.
Putin
That's
could
ridiculous.
have done it, right? And here's him going on some naval expedition that he invited the press to in 2015. And it's as if we are supposed to think that he's like, here I go.
Keep it up there for a second. This is amazing.
When you showed that, I thought that was a joke, like a Photoshop job.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, no, they're not trying to even suggest this, right? But they are.
It looks like
I
Life
mean, at least
Aquatic,
he's got
like
almost a full roll.
doesn't it look like Life Aquatic, like Steve
he's gonna
Zissou,
start going like
Bill Murray? Like, I mean, this is what it looks like, right?
It looks like he at least has a full roll of paper towel right behind him there.
Exactly. Yeah. So Nord Stream
That's not a
sabotage
paper
mapped
towel.
how
That's
Putin
one of
could have
those,
carried out the attack, it says.
Foam shooters, it looks like, that our kids have.
So let me read the headline. Nord Stream sabotage mapped how Putin could have carried out the attack. And they use a photo from 2015 in a submersible in the Black Sea. Like he's going down to, like, he did these things a couple of times. Right? He would go out in the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea separately. So that was the Telegraph using that photo. And then, not to be outdone, the awful news outlet Reuters, which if you ever read anything by Reuters, you should immediately run the other way and take a shower. They also used a similar picture, but this one from 2013. This time, Putin was actually in the Baltic Sea in a separate submersible. And so they're making the point, and in this article, and they even say Russian submarines are very well practiced. It's this sort of thing. How he's basically they're good at this. You know who else is good at this? The United States. They're quite excellent at it, by the way. Putin blew up his own pipeline, is what they want to believe. He spent $11 billion building a pipeline, years to build. If you have by the way, if you have an IQ higher than 40 points, you'd realize this is ridiculous. That is propaganda.
Again,
even Forrest
Gump. They had
the
the spigot. So if they wanted it to not be operational for some kind of punitive reason, they could just keep it off. And it has been off.
Right. And using it as leverage, which we'll get to in a second. Like, seriously, if you have an IQ higher than 40 points, you'd realize this is absolutely ridiculous. Even Forrest Gump would see through this argument. You would have to be brain dead to believe that Putin had anything to do with this. And last night after our broadcast, Tucker Carlson brought up a really excellent point on his show about leverage that I hadn't thought about at the time. Listen to his take on this.
So the question is who did it, and of course the prime suspect is obvious. It would be the same man who caused domestic inflation here in the U.S. and stole the 2016 election from Hillary Clinton. That'd be Vladimir V. Putin. And that makes sense until you thought about it for just a moment. Vladimir Putin may be evil. They tell us that he is evil. But is he stupid? Probably isn't stupid. And yet, and here's the strange part, if you are Vladimir Putin, you would have to be a suicidal moron to blow up your own energy pipelines. That's the one thing you would never do. Natural gas pipelines are the main source of your power and your wealth, and most critically, your leverage over other countries. Europe needs your energy, now more than ever with winter approaching. If you can't deliver that energy, then countries like Germany have no need to pay attention to what you want. You're in the middle of a war, an all-hands-on-deck war, so you need all the leverage you can get. Under these circumstances, there is no chance you would blow up Nord Stream 1 or 2. Not now, obviously.
Great point, right? It's the leverage. It's a point I hadn't thought about after last night's broadcast at the time, but think about it, right? You take this away, you take away his leverage, his ability, as you said, to turn off and on the spigot.
Right.
To say, well, it's down for maintenance right now. We need these parts from Siemens in Germany, and then we can get it back up and running, and then we'll let you have some gas. You want to pull back on your sanctions against us, and maybe we'll put some of this gas back in your homes.
I just have to wonder if the United States and the Western media thinks, well, we've been successful at blaming most things on Putin up to now, so we can just keep going. Yeah. Most people accept that he's doing all the bad stuff.
I think they think people are really stupid. I really do. I mean, because yesterday, literally on the same day when this explosion happens, or the day before, they announced the new Baltic line, the new Baltic pipe, which literally comes from Poland through Denmark into Germany and comes through that entire way. So they launched a brand new
Western
back. it was EU leaders got together and they did a little pomp and circumstance on the very same day they launched the new pipeline.
It starts in Poland, is what you're saying?
I believe, yeah, I think it starts. I think the beginning of it, the Baltic Pipe, is in Poland. Maybe you could look this up.
So it is not a Russian.
No.
Okay.
This is a Western-backed pipeline. Again, this is not a Russian pipeline. They announced it opening on the very same day that this explodes. I mean, you really have to take us for morons to believe that that these aren't connected in any way. Meanwhile, according to German newspapers, the CIA had warned Germany that Ukraine was going to attack the pipeline. This is a bombshell story. I mean, this might be the biggest story of all. The CIA warned Germany about a planned attack on the different pipelines over the summer, according to Der Spiegel. There were already indications. The CIA was telling them that Ukraine was going to attack the pipelines. Really? What a bunch of garbage. You think that, first of all, Ukraine has nuclear-powered submarines and could pull something off like this? No. The answer is no, without any help from NATO guiding them to do it or using them as a proxy in order to do it. You would be a fool to believe otherwise. And
the rhetoric was, this pipeline we don't want you to have, it may not be there, just so you know, in short order.
Right.
So it was very like, hey, let me make you an offer you can't refuse, kind of, from what I read of, and I admit I did translate it. I don't read German.
Well, meanwhile, President Putin has a message for the world saying the United States should be suspect number one in this. Number one. They should be investigated. And I'm sure that we will get a thorough investigation from NATO investigators, right? Maybe sending those, why don't we send those bumbling fools from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the same fools that went to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and said, we couldn't figure out why all this bombing has happened. We don't know where it's coming from.
Who is doing it. We just think that it's dangerous and it should stop, which was what we all sent them for, because we already agreed it was dangerous and should stop.
We saw some bombs on the roof that said USA on the side of them, and we couldn't put it together. We don't know. We just can't figure this shit out. It's above our pay grade, so we can't figure this out. So we could send those people.
Some have even said Russia go home. Had all kinds of pretty messages painted on them.
We can't figure it out. We really can't. White House Press Secretary Jean-Pierre dodged questions today when asked about U.S. involvement in this attack, and instead wanted to remind us why fossil fuels are bad. Listen.
As you all know, these pipelines weren't pumping gas into Europe at this time. NS2 was never operational, as you guys know. NS1 has not been operational for weeks because Putin has weaponized energy, and we have said this many times before. This just drives home the importance of our efforts to work together to get alternative gas supplies to Europe and to support efforts to reduce gas consumption and accelerate true energy independence by moving to clean energy economy.
Yeah, let me read off my notes here. When someone asks you about Nord Stream 2 being blown up by the United States, we want you to just remind the audience there that they should buy an electric car and get solar panels on their roofs.
I mean, can we use that line of logic for any tragedy then? Like, people died in a hurricane. Yeah, but those people didn't have nice homes anyway, so it's okay. Like this, just, this is the new way that, some of those people were old anyway, so that's all right. And the United States the world is overpopulated, so that's okay too.
Oh, they were in a car accident? Oh, were they driving a gas guzzler? Oh, if
then
they
we're gonna send suit, right? So this is obviously a flawed and insensitive line of logic.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says that there was clearly sabotage, and he's right about that. These pipes are designed, if you look at the physics of these pipes, as I did today, they are designed to withstand just about anything that you can throw at them. Literally, the steel pipe itself has a wall of 4 centimeters, 1.6 inches. It's coated with steel reinforced concrete, up to 11 centimeters thick. Each section of the pipe weighs 11 tons, which goes to 24 to 25 tons after the concrete then is applied to it. Then, these are designed to withstand a massive ship anchor, which they have to deal with on a regular basis, and so they test them against this. Those massive ship anchors? Have you ever seen like aircraft carrier? Have you ever seen a cruise liner with those giant anchors? Right? Yeah. It's designed so that if one of those falls off the ship, It bounces off of the pipeline. So again, yes, clearly sabotage. So here's the question, though. How were they blown up? This is really the ultimate question. So I spoke to military and intelligence sources today that said that the United States would have carried out this terrorist attack in one of two different ways. A, by using Navy SEALs who would have descended and then placed explosives on the pipes and then detonated those explosives remotely. That seems less likely, given the advanced technology they are now using. But it's far more likely, they said, that the Americans used underwater drones launched by U.S. submarines in the Baltic Sea. That's probably how it happened. So an investigation would clearly show drone fragments among other pieces of evidence. We also know that U.S. warships that have these capabilities were just seen in the area days ago. Just days ago. And by the way, the largest of those ships would have been able to carry this attack out easily, coordinating with submarines. And I'm sure the cushy relationship with NATO that they have with these investigations, they could probably ask Americans, what submarines were in the area? Right? NATO could easily figure this out if they had an investigation. What submarines were in the area at the time? Who was on board? What were they doing there? You just happened to be swimming by, like right by the pipeline at the time?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are logs.
Like, what were you guys doing on the night of September 26th, 2022? Where were you guys? Where were your nuclear submarines at that time? Where were your special drones, the underwater drone technology that we're using? I'm sure they'll get a straight answer out of it. Germany, though, is furious this morning. German officials are saying it was an act of sabotage. They're not pulling any punches. Before the terrorism attack, German citizens were calling on their government to turn on Nord Stream 2. Literally 24 hours before this attack, thousands were taking to the street demanding the launch of Nord Stream 2, calling on their government to turn it on. We are going to freeze. We don't have firewood. We don't have any other way to heat our home right now. Turn it on. Stop playing politics with our lives.
Now they don't have a choice. That choice has been taken away from them.
It's really, really tragic. Like people at home want to just say, oh, good. I see people on Twitter like, yeah, way to stick it to the Russians. Like, do you understand anything? Like,
I mean,
you're sticking
the
it to?
Polish prime minister or whatever that said thank you, America, or something?
Right.
Yeah,
we did collectively agree that the Gulf oil leak was bad, right?
Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. Should we not collectively agree that this is equally as bad? Even if you take the politics out of it, right? Sea life will die there. This will disrupt an entire ecosystem just for political gain, for whoever.
Well, and that's methane.
Yeah.
Methane going into the atmosphere.
Yeah,
right.
So awful, right? That's the thing we keep hearing about, like what, cow farts and everything else. Like, that's killing us.
Right.
Right now, you literally have a massive explosion of it. And by the way, that gas line was filled. That was filled to capacity.
Probably more methane than whatever was taken away from the Dutch farmers, right?
Well, and the video
Equal
doesn't really
amounts now.
do justice.
Great point, yeah.
Because I believe they said that that's a 2-mile radius. I believe that you're seeing there where you see those bubbles. Like, it looks small on video, but that's 2 miles.
I know it's hard to see it with scale, right? Because it's in the middle of the ocean, right? But yes, it's massive, massive. So Germany...
Was Philip going to say something? I thought I heard Philip talking. No?
No, something just went weird on me for a second. I didn't say anything, though.
Okay, sorry.
So Germany is pointing fingers right where it belongs today. This German citizens, German newspapers coming out, they're pointing the fingers right where it belongs at the United States. The United States has been telling us for months that they've been planning to do this. They plan to take it out, right? Here, they plan to take out the pipelines. They plan to attack the pipelines, get rid of them. They're gone. I mean, here's evil incarnate, Victoria Nuland. Remember, she is the one that led the coup in Ukraine under President Obama. She overthrew the government to install the puppet regime. Here she is telling us what the United States will do to this pipeline.
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
Okay, so thank you for giving us that clear indication. Also, we heard from President Biden said the exact same thing. So they've told us they plan to do this, right? And remember, Victoria Nuland, of course, was the person who told the EU to go F themselves. You remember this, of course. This comes a few years after the Obama administration was caught bugging and eavesdropping on German officials, specifically the Chancellor Angela Merkel. But of course, remember at the time when her phone was bugged for 11 years by the United States. And then the United States had to apologize for it. Victoria Nuland had to apologize for telling the EU to go F themselves as it relates to putting a puppet regime inside of Ukraine, which could adversely affect Europe. She said, F the EU. Screw the EU. And then, of course, Angela Merkel fired back and said those remarks are unacceptable. And so what you're basically saying is you intend to screw the European Union. You intend to screw Germany by what you're doing in Ukraine.
Yeah.
That was the message from Victoria Nuland.
This is mob behavior.
Yeah. And this is like desperation, rat trapped in a corner behavior. That's what this is, in my opinion. So the United States has a nice long track record of trying to screw over Germany. And it's not just Democrats, by the way, in the United States that want to destroy the Nord Stream pipelines. It was President George W. Bush. It was his cronies, Condoleezza Rice, warmongers Condoleezza Rice, Dick Cheney, and a lot of them. Here was Condoleezza Rice, who was saying this is all part of the plan. You can see this is clearly all part of the plan. Listen to how she describes Germany's reliance on this gas and what we want to do about it.
And I also understand that one of the complications is the Europeans, who are very dependent on the Russians for energy supply and business relationships. But they also need to recognize that if Putin is not stopped now, we could find ourselves in a real conflict with Russia down the road.
Well, actually, let me jump in right there. Germany, arguably the strongest power in Europe, at least economically. Right. There's been criticism that Angela Merkel and others haven't been aggressive enough. What do you think of that? Do you think Germany's been as aggressive as they should be?
I'm quite an admirer of Chancellor Merkel, and I heard her statement when she was with President Obama in Washington. I thought it was a very good statement. But now we need to have tougher sanctions, and I'm afraid at some point this is going to probably have to involve oil and gas. The Russian economy is vulnerable. 80% of Russian exports are in oil, gas, and minerals. People say, well, the Europeans will run out of energy. Well, the Russians will run out of cash before the Europeans run out of energy. And I understand that it's uncomfortable to have an effect on business ties in this way. But this is one of the few instruments that we have. Over the long run, you simply want to change the structure of energy dependence. You want to depend more on the North American energy platform, the tremendous bounty of oil and gas that we're finding in North America. You want to have pipelines that don't go through Ukraine and Russia. For years, we've tried to get the Europeans to be interested in different pipeline routes. It's time to do that. And so some of this is simply acting, and acting as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I find that so disingenuous, knowing the United States history of building wealth on petrodollar recycling through under the table type deals with OPEC nations, and then acting like everyone should act benevolently and in everyone's best interest when it comes to oil and gas. And we are going to be good leaders and teach other people how to do it. I just can't believe that anyone, either she's not read any history, right, and got to that point in her career and feels comfortable saying that because she's historically ignorant, or otherwise, how does someone say those words if you have any historical notion of petrodollars? How?
She was a professor at Stanford, Natalie. She's a brilliant human being. We should all bow down to her genius. I mean, and to think that we are going to, like, what she's saying here is we need to act. We need to tell them how to live their lives, and they are too dependent on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to act. If they're not going to do it themselves, we are going to take action and make it happen. We are going to make it happen. So this plan has been on the table. Why did the CIA know about this?
Yeah,
they knew about it because they just walked down the hall and they talked to their cronies. Oh, when are you guys planning on that attack on the pipeline? Oh, next week? Okay, we wanted to give Germany a heads up so they can make some adjustments, be like a friendly thing to do. And by the way, we're going to blame it on Ukraine.
This is such a bully move. And it's really upsetting.
And you're watching this. This is the Great Reset in action, guys. This is right before our eyes. Joe Biden gets in office. What does he do to Keystone Pipeline? Shuts it down.
Yes.
Right? And not just the Keystone Pipeline, all of the tributary pipelines associated with it.
Right.
Not just the main one, but all of the other tributary pipelines associated with it. Wouldn't allow additional, drilling. On the list goes on and on and on. And then you blame it on Putin, right? And this is the strategy and tactic. And then you try to shut down Europe and their access to fossil fuels as well. It's all part of the plan. And you're not a conspiracy theorist, guys. Like, this is happening right before our eyes.
Yes, it is unbelievable. It feels like a movie. Like, it literally was Jason Bourne that got on his scuba gear and went and did this, right? It's too much, too close to fiction at this point. But it's also, it's real. And it turns my stomach to think about it.